She grew up hearing her father's courageous stories about his service as a soldier on the front lines liberating France and Germany from the Nazis during World War II. Then, later in life, as she faced a crisis of her own, she drew upon the lessons that her father taught her about persevering even when it seems that hope is lost. Now she's here to share her inspiring message and talk about her amazing book tonight on Boss Up Goddess. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview trailblazing women who share their wisdom to help us all live bigger, better, and bolder. Elaine Makas, Ph.D., is doing exactly that as an author of this book, A Young Man on the Front Line, Lessons of War. I am so proud to welcome you, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yay. Well, your book and your story are so inspiring because you grew up hearing your father's story, Sergeant Chris Makas, and remarkable, amazing, very graphic stories that he shares. And then you actually wrote the book, but you had to get through your own personal struggle first. Can you talk about the stories and the courage that he instilled in you as a child?
Yes, yeah. Um, my dad was a little on the quiet side, but very centered, very balanced. Loved his children, his daughters, my sister and I. He just like, that was everything. And he had like this wisdom that other people didn't have, and it just eluded from him because I think he learned it from the inside out, not the outside
Uh-huh.
in.
Uh-huh.
And he would begin to tell us things, and I trusted him so much because he had this innate wisdom. I learned as I was growing up. That was learned on the battlefield. That was learned in times of facing death and caring for the dead and the dying and the incarcerated, the Holocaust victims. So
Mhm.
I think he was either going to go crazy or he was going to become a very wise, stable man, and that's what he
Uh-huh.
did.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, Elaine, some of the stories you share in here, and he actually kept a journal, and they're in such vivid detail. And I'm telling you, I never would have picked up a soldier book to read on my own. But as I was editing this book, which we published here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, very proud to have published this book. I was absolutely enthralled by the storytelling, which you did such a masterful job, and the vivid information and like his lessons of war on the battleground, Elaine, like when he was 18 years old leading these young men and they were his responsibility, and it was horrific conditions. And so can you talk about what you learned from that about your father?
So I was always very close to my father, and he would tell these stories. So we asked him if he would, write some of them down for us. And he did it took him about 5 years, I think, to do a chronology of where they were when, all in military time. And so just to weave it all together was really cathartic, you know,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
for me and for others. I mean, everybody who knew my dad, I mean, they loved him. He just adopted everybody, and they would say, "Oh my gosh, I started crying because your dad, is like this, and now I know why, and this and
Uh-huh.
that."
Uh-huh.
It's been really, and my family, feels like, oh my gosh, we have this as our in our family collection of
Mm.
things. So yeah, it was. I tried it several times, the task of writing this,
Uh-huh.
but I had 4 children. I had a career. I was an educator, and I was a single mom after a while. And so I tried, but I just couldn't, get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a notebook and a box, and I just put everything in there every time I found something. So when I was able to write it, I just opened this treasure chest, and there was so much there.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Oh my gosh. So this, what you just said, that's like the essence of such a powerful life lesson, because I hear so many young mothers say, "Oh, I want to be writing, but I have kids, I have a husband, I have a house, I have a dog, I have a job." And it's like, hold on, your kids are going to grow up and you're going to have time. So Elaine, can you please share the importance of having patience and when you're going to tackle a giant life accomplishment like writing a book, which is so difficult, to
Right,
just
right.
be
Well,
patient.
yeah, you have to be patient with yourself, because actually it was written right at the right time in my life,
Mm,
because I had gained some of my own wisdom by applying what my father had taught.
mhm.
And so actually, I think the book is better than it would have been 20 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
wow.
because I had a better understanding with my own trauma and stuff about what he was teaching,
Mhm,
and I was able to, I think, integrate that in the story and
mhm.
understand even what was happening better.
Right.
I know my dad was only, he was 18 drafted, 19, taking men into battle, and um, I think that, but you learn through your own life, and so I wrote it at the right time in my life
Uh-huh.
about his life.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. So can
yeah.
you talk about what you had to go through personally and how the lessons of war that you so beautifully include at the end of each chapter helped you through your own challenges?
Sure. When I was just towards the end of my career, I was diagnosed with cancer, and it had spread. And so I had to have a chemo regimen, 7 months, and I had two surgeries, a lot of medicine. It was a fight. And I was frightened. I was really frightened. And I got a big poster board, and I wrote down um, my dad's seven most gruesome battles, really, on the battlefield. And so I named each of my chemos after one of his battles. And
What?
then I put a scripture and a lesson with it. So as I went through, I kind of went through the battlefield with him, because he was gone by then. He wasn't with me. Um, yeah. So afterwards, I'm like, I have to write this story. I have to
Oh
write.
my goodness, Elaine, that's remarkable.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was very helpful to me to draw on the strength of a loved one, even when they're not present,
Wow.
you know.
And let me just share the battles that you described that your father survived. It was winter. They were freezing. People were getting shot all around. It was dark. There was all kinds of, you name it. It was terrifying. It was gruesome. It was grueling. And there was no, sometimes what did the senior soldiers say to them? Just keep standing and keep fighting.
Yeah,
There was some kind of line like really, really kind of morbid. And but that was the reality that they were facing at the time.
yeah,
So
yeah. When they realized they couldn't take that objective, and the veteran officer said, "Well, we keep trying until none of us are standing." And they're like, "Oh, okay, we got it." You know what I mean? We're take this,
right.
and they did. They took the objective because they're like, "Okay," I mean, it kind of at that moment sunk in, and
Right.
So yeah, they became quite what they call dog faces, which
Yeah.
is a nickname in the Army for those veterans who have experience.
Hmm. Wow, I am still stunned by what you said about how you actually used each battle and named your chemo treatments after them. Wow.
Yeah,
That's stunning. And so it got you through because look at you now. You got through it.
I
You're
got through it.
beautiful. You're vibrant. You're living a really full, happy life. You wrote the book, which is an accomplishment unto itself that many people never achieve. So this is just such cause for celebration. I love it.
Well, thank you, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
And I know when women look at it, they don't think it's a book for women, but actually, it's just for humans. It's just the things humans face and what they learn from it and how they adjust. It's the same,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I do have women read it, they go, "Oh my gosh, I love this!" And so um, it's really a universal story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, absolutely. And for young people too, to learn about the war and to
Mhm.
see it through a relatable young man's eyes.
Yes,
And then to learn the lessons which are totally applicable to everyday life now.
yes.
And again, I have to echo you what you said because I'm a woman and I read it and I was just, you know what it is, Elaine? It's that you balanced the gruesomeness, the morbidity with the lighter moments. There's humor with the soldiers. There's kindness when they shared food with the imprisoned, captured German soldiers who were hungry. That humanity is so beautiful in there. And then there's romance, like when he met your mom. I have chills. It's such a touching story. Oh my gosh. So, can you talk about the writing process, Elaine? Because we know that's no easy feat.
No, it's not an easy feat. Being an administrator for many years, I only wrote um, factual things that, when you're writing memos and policies and all that, you're not putting in the weather and the colors and the feelings.
Uh-huh.
And so this was my first stab at narrative writing. And I outlined it first. I organized it because that's just me. Everybody has a way of doing it. And then I got it all together, and it's really hard to weave chronology with stories with the actual data from the Army, the morning reports, and all that to make sure everything's on the right day at the right time and the right battle. And when I kind of went through the whole thing, I said, "Oh my gosh, I forgot this battle." And then I put it in. And then I read the whole thing and I'm like, "Oh, wait, that's the same battle as this one." So I just took all my papers and I just cut them and taped them together so that the story was just one long, yellow brick road.
Oh,
And that's how I got the chronology correct. Then I went back and I looked at, well, what did they see? What did they hear? What did they smell? What did they taste? What did they touch?
mm-hmm.
Um, and I tried to make sure that was in there. And the weather was very important because, like you said, it was the coldest winter in Europe in over 100 years. It was very, very cold, but the cold and the frozen and the barren was very parallel to war itself, you know. And
Wow.
so that was a parallel or a theme that kind of went through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I went back again and I looked at the verbiage, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, to make sure that it was at an emotional level and not just reading a factual thing, so it has
Right.
feelings
Yes.
and all that. And I remember I did put one word in and you're like, "Would your dad know that word?" Because I said, it changed my dendrites. And I know we don't say dendrites except now because it's an educational term. I go, okay,
Uh-huh.
I think I said it changed my thinking. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
My brain changed. So
Mm-hmm.
that was funny because things have to be, it has to be realistic to the time. And it was, it was 1944.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. And what's nice is they were triumphant. They did feel like they helped humanity. So they were able to carry some of that pride as, and I don't mean bad pride, I mean self pride in the sense of that they felt that they had done right. And so they could hold up their heads.
Oh, yes,
It's
yes,
a little
yes.
easier to heal from something that you don't blame yourself for, but
Oh,
the war.
wow.
But he lived with certain guilts, and I guess you'll have
Mhm.
to read the book to find out
Yes, people have to read the book to learn what that is.
what that
But
is and how he overcame it and that sort of
mhm,
thing. Yeah.
mhm. Did he know that you would ultimately write a book before he passed?
I told him the first time I tried, which was probably 25, 30 years ago, and so I had written a little bit and I had given it to him, and then he went through and wrote notes on it for me.
Oh,
And I kept
wow.
that and I
Uh-huh.
rewrote all of it, but yet I had the notes, and he had written some numbers, and along the numbers he had said, well, this is where Al, got drunk, and this is where, yeah, this is
Uh-huh.
where somebody lit a cigarette in a no light zone. And so I kind of had an idea where the personal stories went in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there were things that I didn't know, and he wasn't here to ask anymore. Like I thought, I don't know how mortars work, so I had to look that up.
Oh,
And
right,
then
right.
the signs of PTSD and how you recognize post-traumatic stress disorder, how you deal with it in others, how you see it in yourself. They called it um, battle fatigue. And in World War One, they called it shell shock. And in the
Mm-hmm.
Civil War, they called it a soldier's heart. We now call it post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's all the same thing. People don't realize that. And so they dealt with many things their whole life. And that's another important lesson that I learned, because as a cancer survivor, there are things that are different in my body. There are things in my life that are different, my energy level, my need for downtime. There's just things that have changed, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the ability to live with who you were, who you are together. You know,
Ooh, wow.
like, and so
Wow.
yeah, so they had to let go of some things. I had to let go of some things. I think everybody in life hits an epiphany. Unfortunately, usually trauma is where you get your greatest epiphanies, but sometimes trauma destroys people. It's too bad we can't have some of those without the down. But you and I have talked about it before. When you're down, I try to tell people you're on the springboard, you're down, but hang in there because it's going to come back up. And when it does, you're going to rise higher than where you were standing. You
I
know,
love that so very much. That is so powerful. It's actually a springboard when you think you're so low, but it actually catapults you up. And look at you now. And you have some amazing events coming up. Can you talk about those?
I do. I'm really excited. I have my book signing on VE Day, which is Victory in Europe Day, which is May 8th, which is Saturday, in Frankenmuth, Michigan, at the Michigan Heroes Museum from 1 to 5. So that's going to be fun. We had to cancel it the first time because of COVID.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm excited about that. And then I have on the 12th, Wednesday, the 12th of May, I am, oops, there, that's the highlighting. They're doing, as an author, I'm being highlighted that week at the Detroit Writing Room. And then
Oh,
on the
excellent.
19th, I'm speaking at Fisher Hall in Frankenmuth. And it's going to be, it's part of their lecture series from the Historical Society in Frankenmuth,
Mhm.
very active.
Uh-huh.
So that's at 6 o'clock. And then the following week, on the 26th, I'm doing a book talk with the Detroit Writing Room. And
Excellent.
yeah, yeah. So
That's
the
awesome.
19th is open, the 8th is open. I believe you have to register for the writing
Mhm.
workshop or the book talk at the Detroit Writing Room, but they can
Mhm.
go right online and do that.
Right, right. So I'll put links to everything in the description box so people can participate in all these wonderful events that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sounds so much fun, especially at the museum. So it's you spent many decades as an educator at University of Michigan Flint, Saginaw Valley State University, and as a consultant, you've written other books, and your mission really is to educate people about the war and the lessons that your father instilled in you that are now in the book. Can you talk about the importance of young people reading this book, Elaine?
Yeah, I began my career as a social studies teacher. I taught U.S. history. And as time goes by, World War II is becoming just, a chapter in a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
We remember some of the people, but most of the kids nowadays, it's too far away from them. And so they find it boring. They don't get it. And they really relate to people who are just slightly older than them because they're looking at what's coming up in their life. So Sergeant Chris Makas was 18, graduated from high school by, 19 in the war, 20 in the war. Um, and when you experience a human story, that's the power. The power isn't, I mean, we have our history books, I understand that, but the power is in personal story, always. And so when I work with teachers, I always say, use personal stories, use people's stories, use literature. And this was written at a level and at a speed that ninth grade U.S. history students and up would really do well with. And it has great discussions. I put discussion questions in the back. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ethical decisions that had to be made. Um, there were things going on that I think that our students face in life, the types of traumas. It's not war, but it's the same type of trauma, ending up somewhere where you didn't expect to end up, feeling alone, fighting every day to stay stable inside. And so there's a lot of correlations between the trauma of the young soldiers and their personal trauma. And those are connections we want young people to make.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It also, I've had even adults who've read it and students who've read it, but I've had adults who read it and said, oh my gosh, I learned so much about World War II. I said,
Yes,
well, did
yes.
you learn that in school? They go, yeah, it didn't stick, I guess.
Right, exactly. That's the magic of this book that when you see it through your father's eyes, you experience it, it feels like you're there. There's the anxiety, the terror, the horror, and it's like, and the hope. And it's like, and then the triumph at the end because we won the war, thankfully. Oh, it's just beautiful. And then that your father came home and met your mother, raised the family, had an everyday, and his reflections on everyday life through the lens of that experience.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
that was
yeah.
so delightful to read.
hmm Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the benchmark for his life.
Uh-huh.
And we all have those benchmarks. We just have to look inside and see, and I've had several benchmarks. I mean, my cancer was a huge benchmark, but
Mm-hmm.
so was my divorce and my marriage. And,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there are benchmarks that really, really carve that path that you're taking. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the self-reflection, like in the journaling and the meditation, all the things you talk about, really, really keep that path um, acceptable. It
Mm-hmm.
keeps it flexible. It keeps it ethical. It keeps it online. When you're off your path. You
Mm-hmm.
just do. You don't say, "Oh, I'm off my path." You're just like, "I don't feel right about this. I don't think I'm doing what I should be doing." And so, yeah, that type of thing.
Wow, fascinating. So do you think you'll write another book?
I do. I
Uh-huh.
do think I'll write another book. I'm starting a book of short stories, 5 short stories. All of them are women. All of them are in ethical decision making dilemmas. All of them are
Ooh,
true.
all of them are true?
All of them are true.
Wow. Are you fictionalizing it or?
Yeah, it's a narrative. One
Okay.
is a short story of my mother who had to feed her younger brothers and sisters, and and her her drive to find food for them. And yeah, and one of them is about a woman in Greece who was um, I'm not thinking of the right word, but seduced by a man. And of course, it's always the women's fault and what happened to her and from her family.
Oh.
So there are stories like that. Stories of my grandmother who was in Crete during the World War II. Oh, actually, my grandmother's sister, I should say, who would strap guns between her breasts or under her breasts to get the guns past the German checkpoints and the massacre she witnessed. So there's there are stories like that they've really had to make some hard decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. So did this sort of boost your confidence as a writer that you can actually tell a really amazing story in an eloquent manner that's gripping and engaging for the reader?
Yeah, it did. I started by coming to your one of your workshops
Mm-hmm.
and listened to you, and I'm like, that's the way I'm going. And you coached. We had some coaching sessions, and you really made me believe in myself because we always have doubts when you're doing something different than you usually do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I was doing a teacher training, no doubt. Writing a novel, oh my gosh, So now I loved it. I loved it
Mm-hmm.
so much that's what I want to do. I want to do
Mm-hmm.
more of that, and I want to do stories that teach
Mm-hmm.
and stories that heal. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I this one, of course, is about my father, but I the next one is going to be about 5 women.
Oh, stories that teach and heal. I love that so much. I can't wait to read that book. It sounds awesome.
You'll probably be editing it sometime.
Okay. Well, Elaine, I admire you so much. Elaine Makas, Ph.D., Dr. Makas. Admire you so much because you have such a joie de vivre. You ride horses, you do wonderful things. You wrote those, this is a tremendous accomplishment, and it's getting 5-star reviews on Amazon, hardcover, paperback, and ebook. And it's just really a delight to know you and watch you do all these amazing things that are helping people everywhere.
Good, good. And yeah, well, we were a good team, weren't we?
Oh, for sure, for sure. It's
Yeah,
such an honor to work with people like you who are on a mission to do something positive and powerful. It's really the mission of this show to showcase women like yourself who are succeeding against the odds, doing something extraordinary, and then serving as an example for all of us to follow. Love that.
good, good. Thank you. And
You're
for those
welcome.
of you who want to write, but you can't right now because you're too busy, you need to have, like, instead of a hope chest, you have a hope writing chest. So every time you think of a great line or a great story, you just write it on anything. I have things written on, shopping, grocery shopping lists, on letters, on whatever. I put it in the box because when you look at it, you go, "Oh, that's good." You know,
Oh, wow. What a
so
great tip.
yeah, keep
It's
your writing box, and it will. And you know what? If you don't write it, maybe your children will.
Oh, wow. Perfect. 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 Thank you so much, Dr. Elaine Makas, for joining me tonight. You are an amazing woman, and everybody should read this book. It's a tremendous tribute to your dad, and it's a celebration of all the values that we hold dear uh, when we think of the ideal of what democracy and freedom should be.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll put a link in the description box to the book as well as all the events that you're doing so people can get in touch with you and attend your events and support this wonderful, wonderful endeavor.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, all of you, for joining us tonight here on Boss Up Goddess, where you got to meet Dr. Elaine Makas, who shared her inspiring story about her father's courage and how that helped her persevere through a tremendous challenge with cancer. And look at her. What a survivor, a published author, living life, loving life, an inspiration for all of us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel. Please do like the video and also drop us a comment. What did you think? Have you read the book? I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. I'm sure it's all good things because that's what people are saying on Amazon. So also, please follow me on Twitter at Elizabeth Atkins. And remember, boss up, goddess. You have the power